little kids are hard. Running a business, hard. Like marriage is messy. And I know that as a wise adult, but it was like this little the little part of me who wanted to fix it all and make it all nice and tidy, right? I just had to say, you know what? Get behind me. I'm going to handle all this messy. I'm going to handle all this overwhelm. I'm going to use these skills that I'm learning, that I learned over this decade to calm it down.
Welcome back to the What Went Wrong podcast. I am your host, Tabitha Thorell, and today with me, we have my very good friend and entrepreneur, Monica Tanner. She is so spectacular. I cannot wait for you guys to hear her story. She is happily married, 4 beautiful kids, and she helps other high-achieving individuals, whether you're an entrepreneur in entertainment. It really, the sky's the limit with her. She works with people on helping them create these amazing relationships that go beyond just the status quo. And so with that, Monica, we all know, like, you're helping people, you have your podcast, you have your programs, and I love this because I wanted to always be a marriage counselor. So when I met you, I thought we were kindred spirits because I really do believe that strong marriages are a foundation for so much goodness in kids and society. And so I love what you're doing. And you're impacting so many lives. But we all know that it didn't start there. We all know that even where you're at in your marriage and motherhood, it did not start there. So our audience is eager to know what went wrong.
I love this. And it's really interesting in the context that I don't tell this story very often, right? It happened. And it's kind of, yeah, no, totally. And when you say like what went wrong, like hopefully I can tie it up in a bow. It's because I hope that your listeners understand that what went wrong is actually what went right for all of us, right? So, but definitely I've had my struggles, and I would absolutely say that in the space of marriage, which I feel would be my highest accomplishment, like you said, it didn't start that way, right? Like it had to all go wrong and all fall apart for me to, have the passion around it that I do now. So, I mean, I would say my story kind of starts when I was 12 years old, and it all kind of went wrong for my parents, right? They announced when I was 12 that they were getting a divorce. And I was like, what? Like, that's not how the story is supposed to go. And so I think from the time I was 12 until I met my husband, I kind of created my life around figuring out how that would not happen to me, right? Like I studied so hard. And when I got married, I was like, this is going to be awesome because I know everything there is to know because I've like intentionally studied and like figured out how to make this work really, really well. And so I got into my marriage kind of with this mindset, like, this is cool. I've got this. I know all the things I've studied. I go to school. I did a bunch of research. Like I know how marriages are supposed to go. And that really backfired on me, I think, because as much as I felt confident that I knew what a good marriage would look like, I also had one foot out the door because I was like, I've never actually seen a lot of really good marriages, right? And so I wasn't like 100% committed because I was like, I don't know. I mean, if it can go right, I've got all the information that I need to know to make it go right. But I don't know, maybe marriages aren't supposed to be forever. So that was kind of like this, conflicting ideas I had in my head. And it's going to be hard for me to put this into words completely, but I have since learned what this was. But when I got married, I wanted it to be perfect. Like I had this picture in my head of what I wanted to create. And I knew that if I was going to create it, I had to do these certain things. Like I had to be a really good wife. And I had the idea in my head of what that looked like, right? Like dinner on the table. And, we wouldn't fight a lot or disagree a lot. Like I would be there for him. Like we would be able to work through difficult challenges in a certain way. I wouldn't feel certain ways, right? And then when kids would come along, this is what it would look like. And we were building this business together. And so this is what, my place in the business was in his place. So like I had all of these expectations is the word that I like to use about how I would be in the marriage, how my husband would be in the marriage, and how this marriage would just look, right? And from the outside, it all looked really great. I always like to post this picture when I'm kind of teaching about the beginnings of my marriage. And it was like me and my husband, we're smiling. We've got these 3 beautiful kids, right? We live in this cute little house and we have 2 cars and a business. And like from the outside, everyone's like, wow, that's the perfect marriage, right? Except for on the inside, I was like falling apart because all of these ideas I had about what this perfect marriage would look like, it wasn't feeling like that at all. Like I wasn't perfect at anything, right? Dinner was never on the table. My husband was always coming home to chaos. I was late on all of the deadlines and the things I had going on in my business. My kids were running around without pants on most of the time, right? I was like nursing a baby and trying to pay paychecks and like just bawling, crying because I wasn't getting any sleep. I was super overwhelmed. My husband had no idea what to do with all of this, right? It was a lot.
Yes.
And I was like, this isn't supposed to be what it feels like, right? Like, I feel like, he's supposed to come home and I'm like looking so nice and I've got dinner on the table. And my kids are like, hey. Yes, like very Donna Reed, right? And so the fact that I couldn't put this all together in the picture that I wanted so badly for it to look and feel like made me feel like a total failure. And what ended up happening was I created for myself this debilitating anxiety. Like I couldn't even get out of bed. After my 3rd child was born, I like legit stopped functioning. Like I couldn't take care of myself. I couldn't take care of these beautiful babies I had. My husband was like trying to hold it all together and like figure out what to do with me because I was like falling apart. And like, I mean, I would go from my bed in the morning to the closet and I would just collapse in a heap because I couldn't figure out what to wear or what I was supposed to do. I was so afraid of doing it wrong that I wasn't doing anything. And it was awful. And so finally, my husband sent me home to my family. He didn't know what to do with me. He was like trying to keep the business afloat. He was trying to raise these kids. Like he was trying to deal with me. And I wasn't very easy to deal with. I know that because I was like, nothing's wrong. What makes you think something's wrong? And I'm like 2:00 on the floor in my closet. I haven't gotten dressed yet. Right. Like, I mean, something was seriously wrong. So he was calling my family and, I don't know what to do with her. Like his mom was coming in and helping with the kids because I was, just really having a hard time. And so my mom was like, send her home, like send her to me. We're going to get her some help. Like we'll figure out what's going on. Right. So I flew home to Texas and I still remember the experience of flying home. Like I've been on a million flights, like flying is something I definitely can do. Right. And I was so freaked out, nervous at the airport. Like I was worried I was going to miss the flight. I didn't know, it was a simple connection, but I had to like go down this escalator. And I just remember being like paralyzed with fear. Like what would happen if I missed my flight and then I was like stuck in this airport all by myself? What would I do? Like nobody cares about me. Like these wild stories in my head that I just were like taking over. And like my whole like experience of everything was so jacked, right? And really what was happening is I was being ruled by my biggest fears, which was if I can't handle this, he's going to leave, right? And I mean, that was the experience I had growing up. I had seen it many, many times. And it was very all or nothing thinking. It was either I'm perfect and this works or something's wrong with me and everybody leaves me. Like there was no in between there. Yeah. And so I made it home safely. My mom picked me up at the airport, and I feel like we had probably a week of just my mom taking care of me. Like back before, I think growing up, I never had this experience of my mom really taking care of me. She was a very ambitious. She was getting her PhD when I was growing up, and then they divorced, and she kind of exited the picture. So I didn't have this relationship with my mom where she kind of took care of me. I didn't really know what that looked like or felt like. But it was so cool because in that environment of my mom dropping everything, I mean, I'm sure she had a full caseload of clients that she just canceled for the week and took care of me and, like helped me get out of bed and fed me healthy foods. And we just walked and we talked. And basically she went through for me what my biggest fears were. She's like, what are you most afraid of? And I said, my husband leaving, I can't handle this life, right? I have so much going on. I'm running a business and I have these 3 kids and I don't know how to do it. Nobody ever showed me how to do it. Like I thought I knew what a good marriage was like, but I don't know how to create that. Like I'm lost. And she kind of went like into my fears, like into my deepest, like darkest, like what's the worst that could happen here, right? So let's say you get up and you make mac and cheese for your kids for breakfast and somebody walked in and thought that was super weird, right? But like, what's the worst that could happen, right? What, say your husband's really unhappy because, stuff is falling apart at home. What's the worst that could happen, right? And we just went through all these scenarios that I was spinning up in my head that I thought was all happening. And what was the worst that could happen? What the worst that can happen, right? And what she did for me was she dislodged this. So now, okay, so a decade later, after all this has happened, I've had lots of training in this area. And so I can tell you now exactly what she was doing is she was introducing me to my adaptive child. So back when I was 12 and younger, and I felt like I had to take care of everything. And if anything was going to happen for me, it had to be me doing it. And I created this adaptive child part of myself that just took care of everything. I didn't depend on anyone else for anything. I never struggled because, if I couldn't handle it, it wasn't going to happen for me. And so I became a complete overachiever, like a perfectionist, like a overcompensator, like all the things. And when I couldn't do it anymore in my life, my adaptive child took over and tried to take care of everything. But what ended up happening was my adaptive child shut me down. And so it was my mom who did this work with me that I now do with clients all day long, every day, was that she introduced me to this inner child part of me, this adaptive child that would swoop in when things seemed to be going wrong or when I was scared or whenever I was having any type of big emotion and just mess everything up. Because it's exactly that. It's a child, right? My inner child didn't have the maturity to know what to do. And so she was trying to handle things the way she knew in like her little 8-year-old, 5-year-old brain, right? And so it's this process of reparenting this adaptive child. It's about creating this nurturing and loving, but also containing relationship with that inner child that messes things up. So my mentor, Terry Real, who's teaching me all of this, he says, adaptive then, maladaptive now. So that inner child was so important and crucial when I was growing up. She knew exactly what to do and she took care of me very well. She's the reason why I am who I am today, right? But I'm not that 5-year-old girl anymore that needed all of that caretaking. And my husband is not, my family that I learned that role from, right? And so now it's a matter of, I've got this. The adult, wise part of me has got this, my life, right? Yep. And so it was just a matter of me taking that beautiful, wise, little adaptive child girl into my heart and saying, listen, I will never leave you. I am so thankful for your part in my life and how you got me to where I am today, but I can handle it from here, right? So yep. I will never leave you. I love you, but you've got to get in the back seat, right? And let me handle all of this. And that's what happened. And so my mom did that for me. I'm so grateful. And it kind of like launched this decade of healing to the point where I felt so strongly that this is what happens to so many couples is I think everybody has to at some point in their life kind of reparent these little children that kind of take over and mess things up for them. Yep. And so now so what happens is you take the template of your relationships growing up and insert it into your now relationships where it's, like I said, adaptive then, maladaptive now. And learning how to do this and how to help people see their patterns or, the little children inside of them that are wreaking havoc inside of their relationships now has become the absolute honor of my life.
That is so much of that story I love. I love how you said, I created my anxiety, because a lot of people, they'll put the identity of I'm anxious. Like that's just who I am. And you're saying, I created this because I was making everything, even the airport, which I am so used to going to, seem like Mount Everest. And I can 100% relate, because when I was in college, I had that same experience. I remember being a freshman and laying on my parents' couch over Christmas break and not wanting to get into the car because it had snowed out and I was afraid we were going to get in a wreck. Now, I live in Nebraska where it snows all the time. Like, I am so used to driving in snow, but I had created this, like, everyone's going to die. And, it was, like you said, it was a defense mechanism that had served me when I was a child, and it was not serving me in this moment. And when you don't know what you don't know, you're just there kind of paralyzed. But I want to know, you did this work with your mom, and I know all the audience wants to know, you did this work with your mom, you stayed there for a week, and you came home, and then what happened? Because I know it wasn't just a turnkey switch, but I know your husband was probably still a little hesitant, skeptical. He has all of these emotions going on too, and you leave and you come back, and that was when you had 3 kids and you have 4, correct? So
Yeah.
like, what happened when you came back? And then, it's been a decade, so we could be here all day, but like, so in that time from when you came back to now, in your relationship wise, like what has transformed?
Yeah. I think it was a matter of really, I feel like the work I did with my mom, just like the work that I do with couples, was the beginning of the relationship I formed with those little child parts of myself. And so it was realizing that that is not me, right? Like the anxiety, it was separating myself from those defense mechanisms, those adaptations that I had, formed throughout my life that had kept me safe until now. And so I came back, and it's not like, boom, everything was
Right.
good again. It
Right.
was like, now I had a tool where I could, like, I knew I was getting overwhelmed. I knew I was starting to get anxious and like making, creating all this anxiety. And now I could go in and say, okay, little Monica, sweet little Monica, who, came by all of this so honestly and has taken such good care of me till now. Like, it's okay. I can handle this. Like, wise adult Monica can now handle all of this overwhelm. Like, she knows what to do. You don't have to do it anymore, right? And so it was just like learning how to have these little conversations with my little younger self. And I mean, that's like a pretty simplistic way to do it. But I was learning the skills necessary. And I was learning that if I could stay in that wise adult part of myself, the part that like, hey, you're right. You've never done this before. You're right. This is really overwhelming. You're right. There's a lot on your plate, right? Like little kids are hard. Running a business is hard. Like marriage is messy. And I know that as a wise adult, but it was like this little chat, the little part of me who wanted to fix it all and make it all nice and tidy, right? I just had to say, you know what? Get behind me. I'm going to handle all this messy. I'm going to handle all this overwhelm. I'm going to use these skills that I'm learning, that I've learned over this decade to, to calm it down. And so that really, I mean, that's what it looked like. It just looked like a lot of trial and error. It looked like I got anxious lots of times after that, but it was like, I knew kind of the protocol. I'm like, okay, I'm not sleeping well. I'm not eating well. I'm not exercising. It's time to make some changes. And here, I think probably is going to be one of the biggest takeaways is I had to let people help me. The little Monica inside of me did not want to allow other people to help me. And the big adult part of me was like, your husband wants to help you. Your friends want to help you. Your parents want to help you. Everybody loves you and wants to help you. And I had to just say, you know what? That's okay. I'm going to let people help me now.
Man, that's so good. And I think I believe so many people are where you're at. And I know I speak to myself because I'm so many times like, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. And you just do it, right? Like if I want it done right, I'll do it myself. And, we have all these mantras that almost it deflects why other human beings are meant to be in your life for a reason, for a season. I'm a big believer in what, especially in entrepreneurship, the book, The Who, Not the How by Benjamin Hardy, because when you allow other people to come in and advance your life, whether that's emotional help, whether it's in a business, even in your marriage, when you're allowing other people and you kind of surrender your pride and that ego, that part of you, like you said, you had to do a lot of things yourself and you had to figure out things yourself. And I know for me, like I tell little Tab, I'm like, you figured it out when you were little. I can figure it out when I'm big. Like, like the resources that I have now, it's that same mentality, right? But like my resources have shifted to where those resources are people. Those resources are surrendering my ego that I don't have to prove myself like I can do it all. And I think for me, it was I had to prove myself that I was okay, that I could do the things, And so I know our listeners on here, there's somebody that's like, that is me. And you've struggled it. And what it sounds like I'm hearing from you too, you started to trust the process and trust yourself. Like, I am going to use what I've learned and I'm going to figure it out. I may have never done this before, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to trust that the resources are going to come, the people, the skill sets, the tools, whatever it has, you're trusting that. And so, I mean, I love that because I know so many, especially women, but men as well. And I think men hold that ego a little bit stronger. Like, I'm supposed to have it all together. I'm supposed to do this all. And then what happens when it all falls apart? What happens when it does go wrong? Because life is ebbs and flows. We're all about, I say bouncing back from failure, and failure, that word, a lot of people get a lot of negative connotation. And really, if you want to switch the word or change it for language, but for me, it's like looking at failure as changing the perception of the word of it's going to happen. It's not if it happens. And I tell my girls this all the time. It's not if you fail. It's when you fail, how you respond to that. I don't want you to never go through failures. I want you to go through failures, and I want to be there to help manage this emotion so they don't have the same kind of stuff, and they're going to have their stuff, but giving them the tools. Like you said, I love what you said, your mom, like, I have this tool, I'm going to figure this out because of this tool. And there's so much, so much to unpackage in that.
Oh, yeah. So I love how you called yourself Little Tab. I think that's so important because we all have a little version of ourselves inside, right?
Yeah.
And if we can manage that relationship well, like, there's just so much goodness, right? Like, it's the little, really, it's the immature parts of ourselves that are messing things up for us. Anytime things are going wrong, it's typically that immature version of us that's trying to step in and from their limited understanding, try to fix things, and they're making a mess, right? And so, like, I think something that's so important is, really being able to step into your mature adult self and understanding. Now, this is the big switch, because this is what you're talking about here, is that I've learned through the years that everything is actually happening for me.
Yep.
Like, I used to think that these bad things are happening to me.
Yep.
Like, oh, I can't, like, I was late and like these things, like, and it's a mess and everything's
me and poor me.
Yes, and this anxiety is happening to me, right? And all of these things were happening to me. And the biggest shift in understanding came when I realized that no, all of these incredible things are happening for me. They're happening for me to have the ability to strengthen those muscles, to learn these lessons, to be able to pass along more to my posterity, right? Like, it's such a beautiful transition when you really embrace this idea that these little parts of us kept us alive. They kept us safe, right? They protected us from all of the things that were happening to us before we were able to process it as an adult. Yep. But now that we are an adult, we can go and reparent that little, and there's nobody better qualified in the world to do it than us.
Yep.
Right? So we replant those little parts of ourselves, and then we create a containing boundary around them. So we can guide them and love them and understand them and honor them for the part they played. But then we have to contain them, and we have to say, look, I've got this now. I will protect you. I will be here for you. When you get scared and overwhelmed and all the things, you get to stand behind my big adult body, and I will keep you safe, and I will run this show.
Yes, I love that so much. The happening for me, even when you look at anxiety, like if you're getting anxious about something, think, how could I look at this anxiety as happening for me? Are there things in my life that I need to shift, slow down, look at differently? Am I, not eating correctly? Am I allowing too much stressors in my life that are important? So like even the bad things that we look at things and think like, oh my gosh, how can I shift this? You hear of this all the time. Somebody will go in because they broke a bone, and then they did like a chest x-ray, and they had a clogged artery that was going to burst, and they were going to have a heart attack and die. So that broken bone was actually a good thing. So we have to look that even emotionally when something happens to us and we just think like, why am I doing this? Why am I depressed? Why am I anxious? Instead of looking at, why am I feeling anxious? Why am I feeling depressed? Are there things that I can shift and move the feeling? So I agree with you 100% as far as when you look at things differently. First of all, life's more beautiful. It just is. When you look at it like everything's happening for you, because we're all our own center of attention. So when you can think of like, I'm the star of the show, it's happening for me, everybody, high five, right? Like we can look at it and then think, how can I shift and pivot to make that life even more beautiful in a way where I feel that peace, I feel that joy in all areas. That doesn't mean you're not going to have chaos. That does, especially if you're a parent and an entrepreneur and married, you're going to have chaos for the rest of your life, okay? But how can you do this in a way that's beautiful to you? And your version is different than mine. And so I absolutely love what you do for couples. I love your perspective on that. Thank you so much for sharing, because I know going back, I mean, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, you're seeing that she's smiling, but I know, Monica, it's because she's on the other side. And when you're on the other side, you can look back at those failures with a smile because you know what's on the other side. You might be on here and you're in it and you're like, you don't understand because you're not smiling. Monica's here and I'm here to tell you there is another side. Just keep moving forward. It's one little step forward. She went and visited her mom. It was one step, one airplane ride, scary for her to just say, okay, I'm going to accept help. So if you're in this right now, maybe you're a mom and you feel like you're drowning, because there's so many days that I feel like I'm drowning. You feel like you're drowning, reach out to somebody else. Ask for help. That doesn't mean you're a bad mom. That doesn't even mean you're weak. It actually means you're strong and you're finding a way to be a better mom to your kids. Because when you can reach out for help, when you can unveil it, when you can expose it is what I call. When your voice stuff, Monica, you talked about that. Like you didn't want to share. You didn't want any help. Like we hide. And I truly believe that's the enemy's biggest stronghold on women. You need to expose it. And it's usually not as bad as you think. So if you're in that failure moment or you feel like you're failing as a mom, you're probably not. But if you feel like that, reach out. Monica, how can they reach out to you? If there's somebody, I know you do amazing work with relationships, and I know you have a challenge coming up and you do that periodically, but just share with our audience how they can get a hold of you, reach you, find you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So everything you need to learn about me is on my website, monicatanner.com. And there you can find my podcast, Secrets of Happily Ever After. I have a YouTube channel with the same name. And there's two ways to work with me, actually. I have a membership that is for couples who are looking to learn the skill sets to really create more intimacy and passion and connection in their marriage. And that's super affordable. I don't want anyone to have an excuse to not prioritize their marriage in this way. And then the other way is I work with couples exclusively in one-on-one coaching. So those are just the two ways that you can work with me. But there's lots of free resources, like I said, on my podcast, Secrets of Happily Ever After, and my YouTube channel by the same name.
I love, and you're on Instagram too, right?
Yes,
Yes.
Monty Tanner 1 on Instagram.
Awesome. And we'll put all the links in the show notes, but I just wanted you guys to hear what her programs were. And like I said, if you're somebody who wants to have a relationship like nobody else, because let's face it, the normal marriage couple today, it's mediocre at best. Okay. I always strive to live a passionate, loving relationship with my husband, and I hope you guys do as well. But we all know that before the what went right, there's always a what went wrong, and just stay true to the process, trust the process, and trust yourself, because what went wrong will lead to what went right. Until next episode, thanks guys.